Well, hi everyone. I'm John Retland, and this is my review of Dark Side of the Ring: The Last Ride of the Road Warriors. For those who don't know, the Road Warriors are one of my favorite tag teams of all time. It's either them or the Steiners. Really, it's a toss-up. It just depends on how I feel that day. They're 1 and 1A. I mean, really, you can't go wrong with either team. But this is about the shoulder spiked, padded, face paint wearing, ooh, what a rush, clothesline these motherfuckers over. This is about the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, Paul Ellering as their manager, and I gotta be honest, this was one of the episodes I was most looking forward to because after seeing, various shoot interviews with Animal and the Road Warriors documentary WWE did back in 2005, that led to, Animal and Heidenreich teaming up as the de facto, the Road Warriors, as I call them, the faux Road Warriors, faux Warriors, if you will, and that was more on Heidenreich than anything. I was interested to see what else they were going to dive into here and what else they could tell. And I knew a lot of this stuff already. None of this was particularly new outside of learning about what Hawk really went through and a lot of the shit that he did to his body. And they dived a little bit more into the split and how Animal felt about that. So I'm just going to dive into a few things here, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Please let me know in the comments. So again, one of the best tag teams, one of the toughest tag teams ever. Jericho talks about there's no one without the other, talking about the art of tag team wrestling. Tag team wrestling is an art, four-person dance, that Animal says. Barry Darso. Barry Darso, by the way, who's Repo Man, hole-in-one Barry Darso. That is something they missed out on. Well, Demolition Smash also, Crusher Khrushchev, a lot of gimmicks. He sounds like every Fargo character rolled into one, and now I can't unhear it. Also, Paul Ellering has freaking shark eyes. It's I don't know if it's a filter or whatever, but it was frightening. Paul Ellering also one of the unsung managers in wrestling, period, in my opinion. But Barry Darso, you have two guys who you have to have two guys who really know each other as far as tag teams go. Paul Ellering, these two had it, like as far as their ability, even from earlier on, in their lives. They were incredibly tough. Like the reason I love the Road Warriors is they came across as legit because they were legit. They just hit guys. They didn't mean to. They didn't mean to be mean. They could be mean, but they just hit guys. And it's not that they didn't give a shit, but they were just worn job guys, like in squash matches. We're going to hurt you. We don't mean to, but this is all we know. This is how we have to keep our aura. This is what we do. We're real, so we're gonna hit you. We're sorry in advance. They talk about, Nikita Koloff, Russian Nightmare. And I mean, it's weird to hear after Nikita Koloff did the Russian accent for so goddamn long in his career to hear him actually talk. I mean, he's done it on NWA Power, and if you're not checking out NWA Power, by the way, please do so. It is really, really good stuff. The new NWA. But Nikita Koloff talking about the Doomsday Device, how insane that was to take. In 1977, we go back to that, and how they meet. Well, Animal's doing like I think 315 on the bench or something like that, and Hawk just like does this open palm slap on his chest, leaves his print. Because Animal was younger than Hawk, Joe and Mike. Joe is Animal and Mike is Hawk, and he talks about how like you should be able to lift more weight than me and this kind of stuff. And they developed a fast friendship. Rich and Dan Hegstrand, Mike Hegstrand, Hawk's real name. Rich, I believe, is the older brother, and Dan was the younger brother. You talk about growing up with him that you didn't cross him, and he would be good to you. But boy, if you did, you would regret it. And then Scott Norton. Scott Norton, one of the most legit tough guys ever in wrestling. I mean, in WCW, he managed to get a feud with Ice Train to actually be halfway interesting. And Scott Norton, by the way, could just do incredible shit in the ring. He was strong as hell, hugely over in Japan. Go back and check out some of his stuff from New Japan. I mean, the former IWGP champion, I believe. He's just that legit tough. He offered some good insight here. I was really excited to hear from Scott Norton. So the more I think about it, the more I like, as I review this was a good piece and it showed different aspects and got other people involved. But the WWE one did dive into more because it was twice as long as this. So, how Hawk was like so tough, he would he was crazy. He would even break his own face with punches. Don't know why. And then we get talking about the collection guys from Northeast Minneapolis, Kurt Hennig, Road Warriors, John Nord, who would later become the Berserker, Nikita Koloff, Rick Rude, Scott Norton, so many others. The Bouncer Lights briefly touched on stuff like that, how there was the owner was a coke dealer, and Joe and Mike were holding a guy over, like telling him he needed to pay up. That's a little bit scary, holding him over a railing. Eddie Sharkey was talking about, what trained him. Eddie Sharkey is still alive. That amazed me. And it's not that I'm trying to write anybody off, but it's just he seemed like he was in pretty good spirits and seemed like he was pretty healthy. He means obviously old, but it's like good for him. I'm glad they were able to get an interview with him before he, before, years from now when he passes away. But it's just, my God, Eddie Sharkey's got to be in his 90s by this point, late 80s, early 90s. And I'm not talking about the decades. But, he didn't get in the ring with them, but he told them stuff to do, this kind of stuff. And that, Hawk and Animal talked about tripping people over on a tripwire, people they would throw out. And one of the guys that they threw out did some flips and everything. They would try to, bet on how many flips the guy would do if he was getting unruly in the bar. And the guy landed Ole Anderson's feet. And Ole Anderson takes Animal to Atlanta, while Hawk goes to Canada. I believe it's in Vancouver. They might also say Toronto for Al Tomko. And they're not really making all that much money. And then Ole sees, a picture of Hawk, thought it was Mike. He's like, wait, there's two of them? Okay, wait, he sees Hawk thinking it was Animal and says, wait a second, I wouldn't bring these guys in. It brings them in, the Road Warriors, based on the Mad Max movies, all that. And at first, they're all in leather and, kind of looking like bikers and stuff like that. And then they did the shoulder pad spike stuff. But we also see footage of Hawk, in a documentary that happened before his untimely passing. I believe after he got saved, if I recall correctly. But there's some pretty good stuff, or, after he, was reborn. And he talks about, like, how they've just, hit people. They weren't trying to be mean, but that's just how their careers went. Ellering, said they came up with the names themselves. They were the newly crowned champs in Georgia Championship Wrestling. Ellering was great for their careers. He laid out matches on napkins and this kind of stuff, took care of them business-wise because they were pretty, Paul Ellering was former wrestler. Hurt one of his knees really, really badly, but he was so good on the mic that, I think it was Ole Anderson that made him a manager. And Ellering was really good, very eloquent, member of Mensa, I believe. Very, very well read, very, very learned. And he passed that on to Hawk and Animal. And Ole even suggested the face paint. Animal suggested the spikes. His buddy sent him some spikes, and he drilled holes in the shoulder pads, coming up with a way to do this stuff. And that's how the shoulder pad spikes were born. The jobber footage, the jobbers got rocked all the goddamn time. Ellering talked about, he helped them be booked in, like, earlier Crockett. Well, Crockett for a bit, but he got booked in the AWA, in Canada, in Japan. I mean, all over, basically anywhere that wasn't WWE. I don't know if they made that many appearances in World Class, if any. But AWA, they were over. Japan, especially. The Road Warrior Pop, because they would always be featured in other territories, multiple territories. They not be tied to any one place. They would always seem fresh. And Japan trip, I believe Road Warrior, Animal was the one that said, like, there were, one guy said there were more reporters there than when Michael Jackson showed up. And their stuff in Japan is great. He talks about lifting up Killer Khan and, like, how huge he was. And then Mike's partying starts to get brought up. This is where things get a little bit tough. He got friendly with the Japanese mafia, which is a bit of a scary thing to do. Promotions start bidding for them, to be there exclusively. Jim Crockett Promotions basically brings them in and, offers them a deal where obviously they're still going to be working Japan, but they are just able to do stuff. So after winning championships in AWA and doing some stuff and everything, they feud with the Russians, Ivan Koloff and Nikita Koloff. I mean, Crusher Khrushchev also was there because Ivan was still kind of full-time, but he was fading out because he'd been wrestling for so many goddamn years. And Ivan and Nikita were the newer guys. And then the Crockett Cup, talking about, Crockett stuff. And then Starrcade 86, scaffold match. The infamous one where Jim Cornette, hurt both of his knees. Well, hurt one knee. I think actually did hurt both. But he wasn't interviewed for this. I guess it was kind of just cut for time and stuff like that. I guess maybe if they had done more about, like, unsafe matches, scaffold matches and stuff like that, maybe Cornette would have been featured. But the Midnight Express and Road Warriors had some pretty good stuff. They actually had a pretty good feud heading in '86. Hawk wrestled in that scaffold match with a broken bone in his leg, like in his lower leg, and wrestled on that. Well, or did the scaffold match, climbing up that That's a bit scary. Hawk's problems then become worse. Animal said around the late NWA, early WCW days, so right around like late 88, early 89. Animal was upset. Then we go their WWE run. They are no longer the Road Warriors because you had the modern day Warrior, Kerry Von Erich, the Ultimate Warrior. Oh, wait, how about we be the Legion of Doom from the He-Man cartoon? Or Super Friends or something like that. Meanwhile, back at the Legion of Doom, the road schedule was tough. The injuries, the amount of pain pills and drinks and stuff like that. Godfather talks about how Vince McMahon was insane and took finishers from multiple tag teams, and no, not like that. Meaning he took the heart attack from Jim Neidhart and Bret Hart, and he took the Doomsday Device from Road War from Hawk and Animal. And if you don't know what the Doomsday Device is, Animal would put an opponent up on his shoulders, and then Hawk would jump off the ropes and clothesline them off of Animal's shoulders, and they would land however the fuck they wanted to land. Vince took that in a strip club. Vince McMahon is insane, and also has his own problems. So, the drug problems though continue. Suspensions. SummerSlam '92 is breaking point. Hawk was so messed up. They were supposed to wrestle the Natural Disasters of the Tag Team Championships, and Vince just noticed that Hawk was so messed up and nixed that and put them against Money Inc. I think in the first match. I think it was the first match. Some stuff's a little bit fuzzy about that. It's first, second, but I believe it was the first match because you just had this roar from the UK crowd. I mean, it was a huge 81,000 people in Wembley Stadium. And of course they had the dummy Rocco. That was so goddamn stupid. And then they go into more stuff about how he stayed in London. He quit the company. They separate. Hawk is in Japan with Kensuke Sasaki, easy for me to say, Power Warrior, and calling him his new partner. Animal was upset, understandably. They kind of skip over a lot of stuff where he hurt his back. He was out for wrestling for a bit. Hawk's life spiraled out of control. He had overdoses. He had a head-on collision with an 18-wheeler, flipped his car or his truck 6 times, according to Nikita Koloff, and walked away. Without a seatbelt being on, by the way, because Hawk was insane. He got Hep C. It was a wake-up call, from the various partying things that he did. He cured it, but then went just right back to partying. Good. That's smart. Hawk and Animal reunite. They don't talk about their reuniting in WCW, like briefly in '96. And then they come back in '97 in WWE. Hawk's problems are made into a storyline. Droz gets brought up briefly because he was made the alternate of the Road Warriors because Hawk was having a lot of issues. They were also writing this into a storyline where Animal and Hawk weren't comfortable with doing the whole thing where Hawk got shoved off the Titantron by Droz, even though he was supposed to be helped because Hawk was going to try to kill himself. I don't know who came up with that, but whoever came up with that was an idiot, probably Vince Russo. But it was insane just that they leave the company. They're on an Australian trip where Hawk and a bunch of guys were up for like 2 days because of all the drugs and everything they were doing. He couldn't wrestle because he was going into some kind of heart, he was having major heart issues. Hawk wasn't going to die in his country. Animal flew him back and basically just sent him there and said, hey, now you're on your own. Well, they do reunite. Hawk becomes reborn. Born again Christian, and he does some good stuff, meets a nice woman. He has a good rest of his life, but he passes away due to heart failure. Everybody's upset, understandably. Ellering still had the van that he drove them in when their careers first started as manager and tag team. And then when the brothers started crying, that got me. When I believe it was Dan, when he did that. I was like, okay. Now, everybody else shares some stories about Hawk, so he had big heart and everything, and, was a good guy, even with his demons. And overall, yes, a condensed version of what happened to the Road Warriors, but a pretty damn good one overall. So, yeah, good episode. The Owen Hart episode is next week. That's season finale. Oh, boy, that's going to be a long review, and that's going to be a tough one to get through. Anyway, agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.